John Moller, John-Moller.
And what is your birthday?
The 14th of July, 1932.
32. So you are now 86. 86. Where were you born?
In Melbourne.
What?
In Melbourne.
Melbourne here.
Oh, Brighton, yes.
Ah. Okay. And tell me about your family background when you were growing up. Your parents and your siblings. How many siblings and what is...
I have one sister. And I have my father and, of course, my mother. And that's about it.
That's about it. So tell me about the schools you went through.
I went to primary school in...
Where?
In Caulfield. And then I went to college in St Kilda, the Christian Brothers College in St Kilda.
Mm-hmm. When did you graduate high school?
In 1947.
1947?
Yeah.
And when you graduated?
I was intermediate. I got the intermediate certificate.
I see. Did you learn anything about Korea from the school?
No.
Nothing?
No.
You didn't know where Korea located in the map?
No, not that I can remember.
Wow. Now you are the Korean War veteran. Have you been back to Korea?
Yes, I have.
What time?
Yeah.
When?
I joined the Navy in 1950, and I was aboard the HMAS Sydney when it was sent to Korea. And that was in Christmas 1951. We were up there from September to March 1952.
Mm-hmm.
And we were up there when the Typhoon Ruth was there. We were up there when the winter was there. The flight deck was covered in ice, of course, and before the aircraft couldn't take off while the ice was on the flight deck. And that had to be scrubbed off by the crew. Not that I did any of that, but...
No, what I meant is that have you been back to Korea since you left Korea?
Yes, I went back on the 40th anniversary of Kapyong, and I went back 2 years ago per favour of Mr. Lee of Buyong Proprietary Limited. So I've had 2 trips.
Wow. So you saw Korea at least 3 times, right? But mostly in 1950, the Korea that you saw, and the Korea you saw 2 years ago. What is the difference? Tell me the details, please.
Well, I never saw the Korea in 1950
because you were in the Navy.
We were in the Navy. So we would be out on patrol for 2 weeks with half a dozen ships guarding the aircraft carrier. And then when I went back in the 40th anniversary of Kapyong, we went, up to the DMZ. We went down to Pusan. We came back from Tucson to Seoul by bus. There was no train. That all happened later. And we then, when I went back more recently, I was just gobsmacked at the developments that had taken place in Seoul. We didn't go down to Pusan. We only went to Kapyong and to the DMZ. But the difference was, quite amazing, with the building and the roads and the people. And that was just in, 20 odd years, I thought that was quite interesting.
So tell me about when did you join the Navy and why did you join the Navy? You said that it's 1950, right?
Yeah, I joined on the 17th of January 1950.
I'm sorry, when?
17th of January 1950. And I just had a wanting to join the Navy. And my mother said, keep the form in your pocket for a month and then we'll sign it, because I was only 17 and a half at the time. So we then went, I went down to Cerberus and joined up, and I was going to be a writer because I was doing clerical stuff and counting and so forth. And but then there was an air stores class starting up at Cerberus, and so I joined that, and then I went from there to HMAS Albatross at Nowra, which is the air station, and then I was posted to the Sydney, and that's when I went to the career aboard the Sydney as an aircraft carrier. I continued in the Navy Reserve, and I rose to the rank of commander.
So what was the most difficult thing? Tell me about the naval vessel that you were in. What is the name of it, and what was it? Destroyer? Or?
No, it was an aircraft carrier.
Aircraft carrier?
HMAS Sydney, aircraft carrier. We had 3 squadrons of planes on board.
What was the name of it?
HMAS Sydney.
Can you spell it?
SYDNEY.
Sydney.
Her Majesty's Australian Ship Sydney.
Okay. That was aircraft carrier.
Aircraft carrier.
And how many airplanes were there, and what kind of airplane were there?
We had 2 squadrons of two squadrons of Fireflies and one of, we had 3 squadrons on board. There was the Seahawk, I can't think of the name.
Yeah.
Memory's gone. But there were 3 squadrons of aircraft on board. 2 of them were like Spitfires in that they had a single pilot, and the other had a pilot and a navigator.
What was your specialty, and what was your unit?
I was in the supply branch, and I was a young stores assistant in those days, sleeping in a hammock.
And tell me about the life inside the vessel. How big was it?
We had a crew of around about 1,200 people, and it was quite large actually. We were aircraft carrier.
And did you take a shower every day?
Yes,
Hot shower?
Yeah, hot showers.
You're lucky.
And we had to scrub our hammocks and clean those every 2 weeks and get them all cleaned up and ready, change the outsides so we get them in.
The army person that I just finished the interview, he said that he took first shower after 6 months since that he was deployed to Korea.
We had all our meals were provided, everything was there for us, and
so you were smart to choose Navy, huh?
Yeah. And we'd have go to action stations when planes would be taking off. We lost a couple of planes and pilots, but that we were all sort of down below, so we didn't see any of that.
And what were you thinking when you were there? Were you in the East Sea or West Sea, Yellow Sea, or where were you?
We'd be on the eastern side of Korea, South Korea, and we'd sail up the sides there. Then we would go. We'd be there for 2 weeks on patrol, and aircraft would be taking flights over Korea, and then we would go back to Japan in Kure or in Fukuoka, and we would replenish and refuel and so forth, and then we would head out again.
Was there any enemy attack against the aircraft carrier at the time?
Not to the aircraft carrier. We had 6 warships, destroyers and battleships around us to protect the aircraft carrier, because they were the ones that they had to protect the aircraft carrier. Without the aircraft, that was it, and that was part of it. The USS Missouri was one of the ships. There were ships from different countries. and they would be guarding us, if you like.
What was your main mission? Remember what did this aircraft carrier did? Did it bomb North Koreans?
Well, it bombed them. They did strafing on the mainland, and they bombed. The Fireflies would drop bombs on it. I don't know the detail because it wasn't part of my area.
Uh-huh. So what do you think about this whole thing? You never knew Korea before, and you didn't actually land it in the theater, in the soil, but you are part of Korean War legacy.
That's
and
right.
now Korea is 11th largest economy in the world.
Yeah, well, and I'm just amazed at the attitude of the Korean people as to what you do. Like they just can't stop helping. You know, they can't do anything to. They just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you, and I'm just amazed at what they do. I was involved with the War Memorial in Canberra on the fundraising on that one with Jim Hughes and Vic Day, but they're no longer with us, of course. I was at the opening of the Korean Memorial in Queensland, and I understand that the one here in Maribyrnong is going to be opened on the 11th of April this year.
And any other episode that you want to share with me about your service?
No, I think the only thing that, as I said, would be the ice on the flight deck, and the sailors had to get up and scrub it all off in order for the planes to take off. Then there was the issue of the typhoon, where we were in harbour in Japan, but we had to get out because the ship was too large to avoid the thing. We lost a number of planes on the flight deck which were washed off during the typhoon. We had Christmas Day in Japan. I caught up with a friend of my father's at the army barracks in Japan, and I met Captain Red Saunders, an Aboriginal captain, and he drove me back to the ship as a young sailor, and I called the officer day, and I'll always remember that as part of the operation. Because then I then stayed on the Sydney, and we went to the coronation around the world in 6 months, and I stayed there again when we went to Vietnam. So, but there was a troop ship when we went to Vietnam.
Mm-hmm. Any other story that you want to share with me? What about, why don't you say something to the world about 70th anniversary of the Korean War? We don't still have a peace treaty at all.
Yeah, well, I noticed that. You sort of, I mean, I was back at Kapyong for the 40th anniversary of Kapyong. Then the anniversary is coming up. I've got a tie for the 65th anniversary, given to me by the Department of Veteran Affairs, and now the 70th is coming up next year, and there's no doubt there'll be. I go to the memorials. I've been the National Secretary of the Korean Veterans Association in different roles, and I just go along and still on the committee.
Great, John. Thank you very much for fighting for the country that you never knew before and sharing your story with me. Thank you again, John.
Right. Do you want any of this?
Sure. Yeah.